this net of existence. And why are we talking about a theory? What is the purpose of a theory? And the purpose is to benefit humans, to benefit all of us, and to benefit humanity. That even in physics, that theory, for instance, there's an uncertainty principle. And you say, well, that doesn't make sense. Here, physicists spend hundreds and hundreds of years, and they come up with, well, we don't know where this little particle is. You know, there's an uncertainty. We don't know where that is. What good to mankind is that theory that we don't know where things are? Well, all our electronic devices stems from that theory that of the uncertainty principle. And the uncertainty principle leads to quantum mechanics, which then allows all the developments we have in the whole field of communications, internet, and that whole realm. Theory is very, very, very critical. For instance, Einstein said that, hey, you know, the speed of light is constant. And so what does that mean to all of us? Well, that allows us to figure out where the planets are, how everything in the universe is related to other things. So theory, you know, social theory, for instance, Freud's, his initial theory about the unconscious, that there's behavior that we're not aware of is due to part of our mind that we're not aware of that's driving this particular behavior. And that theory has influenced a great deal, that it's not only what we're aware of in our minds, but the fact that there's a part of our mind we're unaware of. So theories are very important, and we should sort of bear in mind one thing about models and theories, Einstein's statement that experiments can never prove me right, only wrong. So the whole benefit of a theory is how it is useful and productive. So, for instance, let's look at therapeutic models. CBT was initially based upon these researches of stimulus and response, that we don't know what's in the black box. When I was at the Menninger Foundation in the 60s, the early 60s, just as Thorazine was coming into existence, that they had a unit that had to do with rewards for behavior, a CBT unit. So they would give tokens to good behavior, and they would not give tokens when the behavior was not satisfactory. And we found that these interventions would sort of influence the results of the behavior, would lead to positive behaviors. The psychoanalytic model has to do with the theory of the superego, the ego, and the id. And interventions are based upon changing this psychic structure that's in the black box. And as the psychic structure changes, we get changes of behavior. And the same with object relations theory. Object relations theory posits that there's a representational world inside of everyone's mind. And the interventions are directed to change the relationship of the self to the environment, the relationship between the self and others. So the interventions in this particular model has to do with how can we stabilize the self, how can we create interventions that are going to help the person think more positively about themselves. And then if we move on to mindfulness-based therapies, this assumes that they don't know what's going on in the black box, but certain mindfulness techniques alter in a positive way behaviors. The I system model, the entire focus of the I system model is upon the forces. We call these the I system that keeps everything in the black box rigid and constricted. And the interventions are simply targeted at the I system and are aimed at weakening and dissolving the walls of this black box. So what's inside the black box is always an unknown. However, that once this black box, that the true self that is inside every one of us is liberated with these particular interventions. So that gives sort of a broad overview of models, and I'm sure there's many other models that we could talk about. So let's sort of switch the subject and talk about what is the essence, what is it that gives us a sense of being connected to each other. What is going on that gives us the experience of seeing that there's a greater reality beyond our perceptive capacities in which everything is connected? How many of us have had that experience, that we're somehow connected to the universe, we're connected to others? How many of us have had that experience? Okay, how many have not had that experience of being somehow imperceptibly connected? Okay, but the question is, you know, our body is connected, our arms and legs are connected to our head, to our trunk. We can see that, but what is going on that gives us the experience of connectivity to others? Okay, what is it? Is there a model that we can construct that will make it clear as to how we're connected? Because if everyone felt that we were connected, would there be this violence and hatred and greed and ignorance and injustice in the world? You know, if everyone really felt that connectivity, how do we account for the fact that the world is the way it is? So, Richard Feynman was a physicist, and in one of his books he said, and in many of his lectures he would say that if you're not amazed at looking up at the night sky and seeing gravity at work, you have no soul. So all the constellations are separate, but yet looking up at the sky, there is an order. There is a rhyme and a reason that goes to the essence of who we are. And as a physicist, he uses the word soul, that he's talking about something that is in every one of us, that we have this ability to experience that connectivity. So, you and I are intimately connected to everything else in the universe by a net of existence. This is what we're going to be talking about today, is this net of existence that connects you, that connects me, that connects every one of us to a suffering, crying child in Syria. That what is it? How does this take place? That we have compassion, that we have empathy. What is behind empathy, compassion, our relationship to the clients, to the patients that we're seeing? So we're going to look at the architecture. What is the architecture of this net of existence that all of us have a sense, although it would be difficult to prove, that we're all connected? So let's start and have some fun. If we can take our balls, okay? So we all have one of these balls, and we're going to create sort of a model, okay? So why don't you take your ball, and this is, say, representing the whole net of existence, and put a dot right where you are. Find out where you are on this net of existence. So we just put a dot. Has everyone found out where you are on this net? Okay. Now we want to look at where is the crying, suffering child in Syria that's being bombed, that's being gassed. So put another dot somewhere, find out just where it is that this crying child in Syria is, and put another dot. So the net represents the surface of this sphere, okay? The net is really invisible, okay? But yet, it's all connected by the surface of this ball. So it really doesn't make any difference where you put the dot, that everyone on the planet can be represented here on this, and yet if this surface is the net, it then connects everything together. Okay? So the model of the net is that there is a net that we can't see that connects you, connects all the people we love, everyone else in the universe. And this is the model we're trying to develop here today, that no matter where someone is, that it's connected. And this has a kind of symmetry that basically, you can rotate it, and you can, whatever you look at, is sort of like the North Pole, that basically it has a spherical kind of symmetry. And this symmetry is very important. So the net of existence that we're going to develop has this kind of symmetry, that everyone is sort of treated in a way equally, not as to particularly the individual characteristics. The individual characteristics are sort of, in the word dualistically, the individual characteristics are different, but the net works in the same particular way, so that simultaneously we're separate but yet connected right at the same time. We all have the essence in this particular net. So if we can just sort of let this flow, and we'll look at how this particular net is developed and how this particular net works. So we're saying that we're sort of all connected, but let's look at how we're connected, okay? Let's look at what is it that connects us. So if we can find that dot exactly where we are, and then draw some circles around the dot as it is on the illustration here. So these are sort of latitude. If we look at a globe, these would be kind of latitude circles. So if we could all draw those circles around until we get to like the equator. So this is your net of existence, and just however we draw it is just as it should be. Okay, and then these circles, and that dot is a little tiny circle. So now let's draw the longitudinal lines, which are the lines that go from the North Pole to the South Pole, okay? So there's a line that goes from the North Pole to the South Pole through all these circles. And just draw a number of these lines or loops. So it'll sort of look like that, or however you want it to look like. Okay, so there's our net of existence. We have all the, great, they look wonderful. Okay, well, this is your personal net of existence. So the little circles, we call those existence loops, okay? And they're just going around until the equator and then down. And then the lines that go from the North Pole to the South Pole are sort of connected, okay? We call these C loops or connective loops, okay? So let's look at how this works. And obviously, if you made enough circles here, that basically you'd fill out the whole sphere, and it would be just the surface of the net. But we're trying to look at how this net of existence works, how this particular net of existence functions. So, the first assumption, this is a model. Models have limitations. Only useful is how useful is this particular model. So the first assumption is that it is infused with a pervading, animating principle that creates and orchestrates existence. So we're not talking about this as sort of a physical globe, Earth-like sphere, but this is what the model says is going to produce existence, okay? And orchestrate existence. So it's pervading meaning it's going throughout all of time and space and going from the whole universe, the whole gestalt of humanity. So basically this pervading principle, it's like this ball then goes from smaller than a grain of sand to infinitely bigger than the universe. Okay? So that's the pervading aspect of it. It's an unchanging principle that underlies all matter, energy, information, humanity. And whatever happens in the universe is regulated by this particular net of existence. And even if the planet was destroyed, even if there's nothing left, what would happen to the net? The net continues, unchanged, okay? It's animating. So this model says that each moment it sort of gives birth to existence. And animating means that it works instantaneously. Like you can only act now. Your heart can't beat the blood for yesterday, can't beat your blood for tomorrow, that you can only beat the blood right here and right now. Once the bell is rung, you can't unring the bell. So basically, this net operates each moment, each moment, each moment. The analogy is that the vibration of all these strings generate existence. This is pretty wild, but if you look at physics, there's a string theory, and the string theory says that there are these imperceptible strings, these spiritual strings, these non-material strings, that when they vibrate, they create particles, they create electrons, they create protons. So basically, the string theory is that there are these particular 10-dimensional strings that we can't perceive, that when they vibrate, it generates time, space, and all existence. Okay? So it's like we're the music from the vibration of this net of existence. So this net of existence, that when your ball vibrates, it creates all of existence. Each moment, each moment, each moment. Okay? Do we have any questions? So basically what we're saying that each moment you have a flashing into existence by an incomprehensible set of widening and narrowing E-loops that happen simultaneously throughout the whole universe. Okay? Do we have any thoughts about that particular model, about this particular model? That somehow there is a net of existence, and each moment a pervading, animating principle and existence arises. So if the net would stop, it isn't though we would die, but there would just be no existence. So here's a question. Is it possible that the net creates an explosion, like a huge big bang, but we don't even notice it? What was our thoughts about this particular model that you've created that doesn't describe existence, but the model describes how existence comes to be? Do you have any thoughts, any questions? It seems pretty outrageous. There's one theory in physics and quantum electrodynamics that this fellow Feynman, who we described, he's saying that if you have a particle that wants to go from one point to another point, to really understand it, you need to see all the other paths. So it says you can have every other path. So it means that if this was a little particle, if I dropped it, sometimes it would go this way, sometimes it would go this way, sometimes it would go this way, but the most probable path would be straight down. So basically he's saying that the shortest, to figure things out, that the model needs to include all these unbelievable kinds of possibilities. But what do we think about this particular model before we get into how it works, how it's applied? Any thoughts, any questions about this? Anybody?
I have a question. If the E waves, the loops, and the C loops are expanding and contracting, they would be overlapping? Wouldn't that imply that everything is one?
Yes. Actually, if you rotate from the equator, that basically there is a symmetry, that it's arbitrary, that there's C loops and E loops, because if you just take your ball and look at this and then go the equator, the equator can then be the North Pole. Yes. That's part of the theory, that we're just saying C loops and E loops so we can sort of understand it. But basically, yes, it's all one. But at the same time, this oneness accounts for the total individuality, the whole differentiation of everybody. It's sort of what they refer to, and we'll get in later, sort of a non-dual kind of concept, that we're simultaneously separate and connected at the same time, and yet we don't lose our individuality. We're not, when we go into, you're saying, the oneness, we don't melt away, that we're there. So it basically, we'll get into this whole aspect of one and many, duality and non-duality, but the ball helps us get a little bit of conception about that and goes into a lot of the particulars about that. Other questions about your ball of existence, how your net of existence works?
So it's easier for me to conceptualize a ongoing Big Bang or a continual expansion rather than like it says here, a Big Bang each moment. So I'm just playing around with that in my mind and just trying to think of how to conceptualize this. But that's what's easier for me to conceptualize.
Yeah, so it's sort of it's ever widening and narrowing, so basically it's, a very dynamic that is really beyond our ability to conceive, and we're just looking at a model and seeing if this model is going to be able to help us be better therapists, whether this model is going to give some power that will allow us to understand social issues, to allow us to fulfill a mission of a social worker, the person in the environment. So we're sort of looking at how that starts from the bottom up and in the top down, that how existence takes place is an amazing phenomena. But if we look at the loops, it's going to give us a particular model that's going to have a particular power. But I want us to see that there's a rhyme and reason for existence. Any other questions?
It's easy for me to kind of conceptualize the existence, the energy part of this. What are these connecting? How do they simultaneously allow the existence to flow through the universe? How do I conceptualize what the C loops are?
Okay, so what we see is that we're all separate. Everyone sees that we're all separate. We're all individuals, and this gadget is separate, this is separate, that's separate. That the only connection we have is how it comes to be, okay? And how it comes to be is what connects us. It isn't that there's something here, but the essence comes from the generation, from the root. And if there's no root, there's no creative, as we call it, the pervading, animating principle, then we're all separate and floundering, okay? So we're looking deeper beyond the dualistic conception into why do we have empathy, why do we have compassion, why do we have civilization, and we're looking at there is a natural order that when human beings come on the stage, that this natural order creates a kind of deviation. So let's see if we can continue with the model. And what I'd like you to do is take one of the circles, these existence circles, and draw a diamond just as it is there. So anywhere, you just pick one of these circles and then put in this diamond. Okay, so this diamond, any one of those circles. So basically, this circle regulates your existence, and this is what we're saying, the central control, okay? So every one of these existence circles, that we have existence which comes to be, and then there needs to be some sort of regulation. There needs to be some sort of regulation. So this diamond, we just arbitrarily say is a central control, okay? So everyone have the diamond on your ball. So basically this regulates, for instance, one of these circles could be your cardiovascular system, okay? It's regulated. Could be your temperature regulation system, okay? So it just regulates, so when your temperature becomes too high, you sweat. If you come too cold, you sweat. You shiver. So basically, this diamond is a central control. And it's sort of arbitrary. It could be anywhere. And we're just saying that it's going to be helpful for us to work with this central control. So, central control, this is in existence loops, and it regulates. So for instance, the grain of sand would have a central control, would have an existence loop. So each moment, this existence loop allows a grain of sand to be the grain of sand, okay? That's just how it works. We're saying that there's all existence, but this central control is regulating that. So, existence is space and time. So, how many of you had the experience that time is flying by? Yeah. That we don't have enough time to do this, to do that, to take care of ourselves, to do our job, to take care of our responsibilities, to exercise, to work out, okay? Time is sort of separate from us, yeah? Does everyone feel that, you see the clock moving? Is time separate from us? Does anyone have the experience that time is not separate? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, time just flies by. You know, that's the nature of time when we look at it dualistically. And then space, you know, is this earth the stage that we're born and then so many years later we die? You know, is space separate from us? That this earth is just a space, so we're born at a particular time and then we die, and is space just this stage that we live our life, then we die, and someone else pops up? So we're going to use this ball to look at some of those concepts that cause agony, suffering of every human being, okay? There isn't one of us that isn't concerned about our mortality, who we are, where we're going. So let's look at our ball again. Take a look at the ball and take another look. Where you put the diamond on your ball, if you can just look at that ball, and that's where you are. But these connector lines connect you with the child in Syria, connects you with your loved ones, connect you with terrorist organizations, terrorists. Yeah? These lines connect you with everyone. They connect you with the universe. So, looking at this, that we can look at how we're all connected to everyone in the universe, okay? So as far as space is concerned, that yes, we're separate, but basically we're intimately connected to everyone else by this particular net of existence. And how about time? Okay? Let's look at this as being time. So this ring, where you are with the diamond, that you can go up or down, and there could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1,000 years. So basically, with this conception of the net, we're connected to everything in time and space, but yet we're right here, right now. So are we really separate from time? Are we really separate from space? I mean, what this is saying is that the net, everyone that's ever existed is equidistant from this net, from the pervading, animating principle. That the relationship of the net, it has symmetry throughout all space and time. And this is the model that we're developing that would account for our connectiveness to the past, the connectedness to the future, the connectedness to everyone in the universe. And so, do we have any questions about your particular net of existence? Do you have any questions? Now, this is a model. The models have all sorts of disadvantages, but do we have any questions about this particular model, about what it means to you? Anyone have any questions?
So I guess it was very challenging for me as you first started talking to kind of wrap my brain around these concepts and what you were talking about. And I got particularly stuck on this each moment flashing, right, bursts of widening and expansion. And then you ask the question, how does this, integrate into what you're doing, as a therapist? How does this? And so I had a thought when you said that, and I wanted to kind of check that with our group. So if we're having this opportunity, I guess, each moment is this new burst of existence and expansion, then as a therapist and in working with clients, does that mean then that I can use this as a tool to work with my clients and view my clients in each moment, right, is this new existence opportunity? There's a lot of opportunity for change or a shift in that existence, but yet then at the same time, this pervading, animating principle is unchanging. So I'm wondering if you can shed additional light on that.
Well, this is exactly what I was going to talk about. So thank you. That it's an explanation of now. Our heart can only beat now. We can only intervene with our patients, with ourselves, with the universe, with our loved ones, right here, right now. Each moment is now. And the whole depth of now You know, you read all these books about now, how to get into the now. Well, there's never been a human being that isn't present right here, right now. We can only be right here, right now. You can't exist anyplace else. You can't exist 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago. So basically, we can only intervene, we can only act right here, right now. You can't say something to your client, to your patient, 10 minutes from now, only right here, right now. And yet, the importance of now, it's not tomorrow, it's not what you say to your client tomorrow, the next day, 5 minutes from now. It's right now. What is your disposition? What is your posture? What is your attitude? Right here, right now. That is all there is. But the preciousness of now, it just isn't a speck, but it's connected to everything that ever is or ever will be. That there's a preciousness, there's a specialness of right here, right now, and this, yes, will influence. You know, you're thinking about what am I going to say to him, 5 minutes from now or something, but it's right here, right now. We can only act right here, right now. The power of now is absolutely astronomical. That basically we influence humanity by how we act right here, right now. That basically the universe can't exist without you right here, right now, okay? That the preciousness, the holiness of right here, right now can be understood with this net of existence, and many of us have great spiritual practices, great religious beliefs. That this is a way of conceptualizing it that you'll show it will have a ability to help you understand how to work with your patients. We've really only begun, but this is sort of the essence of it, that right now isn't trivial. There's no moment in your life, whether you're washing your hands, whether you're making your bed, no matter what you're doing, that doesn't influence humanity. That your behavior right here, right now, each moment, each moment, each moment, there's no moment that's any better. People say, oh, I was made for this moment, that there was this child that went into the swimming pool and I dived in, and if it wasn't for me right here, right now, I wouldn't have saved that child. That's every moment. Every moment you have an opportunity to influence the universe, okay? Every single moment. So the explanation of now, it isn't trivial. It's very powerful, it's very, very, very special, and it's, in a sense, very, very holy in many senses. So the question is, does space and time have a new meaning to you? That, the space around us, that basically we're not separate when we're looking at it in this from the net of existence. We're not separate from the space. We're not separate from the garbage on the street. We're not separate from the temple. We're not separate. And we're not separate that, well, if I don't do this, I'm going to waste time. Of course we have to do this to accomplish. Of course there's cause and effect. But every step along the way, whether we're cooking, whatever we're doing, it has a preciousness, it has a uniqueness. So maybe we could, people, does this model that you've created, does this help you have a new meaning of space, time, and existence? Anybody? Any comments, any thoughts?
I have one. It's beginning to manufacture, and we have the same language here. My eye system seems to be manufacturing a new requirement with this in the form of a responsibility I have every moment. I'm going to have to do a map on it. Okay? It's bringing a lot of thoughts to me.
Yeah.
So it's happening, new meaning.
I think for me, space and time is based on perception and how you're perceiving it in the moment. So whether you, to me, it's very fluid, very, the energy is always flowing. So whether we choose to restrict it or we choose to expand it. And I think that's the responsibility that we all have as individuals, is how we perceive it. So, and then when we can perceive it as we're all connected and we're all growing and expanding, it seems to loosen up the energy a bit so that the flow, it can flow. But then when we perceive it as very constricting, we're very individual, we tighten it up and we don't allow the flow, is kind of how I perceive it in the broader perspective.
Excellent, excellent. I think it's for each of us to look at what does this mean to us, what does it mean for relationship to the universe, to your work, to your kids, to your loved ones, to the terrorist organizations. What does this mean? And it is sort of mind-boggling, but we're going to get into this whole aspect of duality and non-duality, sort of the material and the spiritual. We're going to get in, we're trying to see how to unify it, but we're only sort of beginning. So yes, it's going to be a little mind-boggling, but let's see what evolves here. So, this is a good question, huh? Can your little finger move the universe? Okay? Let's look into that a little bit. So, there's a little finger, and let's represent the diamond now with your little finger, okay? So look at your ball, and that's your little finger. Okay? But so there's an existence loop. In this existence loop, make sure that each moment the little finger is a little finger, okay? Little finger just isn't the little finger, because if, for instance, the muscles, the blood supply, if the blood supply stops to your little finger, the little finger isn't going to be the little finger. So basically, there's all these other little loops, the little finger, the muscles, and each one regulates it. So there's a little regulation. So if the blood supply isn't quite enough, little finger is going to send out messages, hey, give me a little more blood, So basically, the little finger has to do with all these other little loops that go down, the bones, the muscles. So each one of those is regulated. In fact, each cell is, go little, small, every cell is regulated. So it doesn't have too much sodium, has the right amount of potassium. So each one of these is regulated by a central control, okay? So that's what your little finger is sort of made up of. Now, let's look at what is sort of your little finger, and let's just sort of go down the ball. So the little finger, yes, connected to the hand, and there's, the hand has to be coordinated so that the little finger does what the hand wants it to do. Your little finger just isn't independent, that somehow it's connected by what? It's connected by the C loops, okay? So basically there's a communication, and then there's a little finger, the hand, and then the arm. When you want to do something, it's very, very, very complicated. All the various systems, but these systems, then the person, you sort of regulate what you want the arm. So basically, you're sort of in a bigger loop, and the small, but all of them have to have these little central controls and existence loops. So that's how your little finger works. It's connected to smaller loops, it's connected to bigger loops. Each one is regulated, okay? So take one of the little diamonds that you have, and if the perceptual connection of the finger to the arm, to the shoulder, to the person is there, but we are connected to groups. We're all connected here. You're connected to family group. This is connected to humanity and connected to the universe, okay? So basically, your little finger is connected to the universe, okay? And we just look at this, so then we go into, now we're looking at the person and the environment, we're looking at neighborhood groups, we're looking at political organizations, we're looking at gangs, we're looking at terrorist organizations. So they're all somehow connected by this net of existence, okay? Do we have any questions about how the net of existence connects? And each one is regulated, so each social group is an organization, but we have to look at each moment, you see. Each moment, your heart beats the blood. Each moment we're not talking about a whole series, but each moment that the social group does something, okay? Any questions on how the net connects us? And the question was about the little finger. So, the net is infused with the principle and is a guiding force in nature and all endeavors. So basically, it allows the electron to be the electron. It allows the nucleus to be of your cells to be the nucleus, and there's this whole interrelationship. Each moment that the net is sort of active. Okay, so do we have any questions at this point about how your net of existence works? Any questions, any thoughts?
Do I understand correctly that C loops are connecting all of these pieces, but the regulation is by the E loops at each of those?
Right.
The control mechanism for
Right.
homeostasis.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the model, and you could sort of arbitrarily rotate it. So we're just saying that for us to understand this imperceptible, ineffable creative process, we're sort of simplifying it so we can understand it, but it's sort of helpful because we can then look at the biology of our bodies. We can then look at all the systems. So there is a rhyme and a reason for doing this. We could not do it, but we do it, just any model is, how is it going to help us understand? How is it going to change the way we take care of ourselves and our responsibilities? That's the bottom line. Sir?
In my mind, I'm trying to piece together where you started and where you've taken us. And if I might summarize my thoughts and then you kind of correct me. As I see, this is suggesting possibly that my eye system is restricted in some way. And as I remove those restrictions, I become more in harmony with all the universe. And then my influence is both inward and outward, hopefully improved. And then this harmony seems to reduce my conditions, my unconditional ability to influence other. And then I go to Carl Rogers and I think, so ultimately I'm creating unconditional positive regard that allows me to be in greater harmony with everything around me.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. I could sit down. I mean, you've said it all. So thank you. That there is a harmony and balance. Just like our bodies, there's a harmony and balance to our body. You know, there's it regulated that it, you know, when, you know, there's too much, you know, you take too much sugar, then it, you know, insulin tries to reduce it, keeps it within certain levels. So yes, and which we'll get into, that each one of these loops tries to optimize itself. So we'll get into that just in a little bit, but that is that's a perfect understanding of it. So these balls sort of move around, don't they? So
You have another question?
Just a thought. I don't understand where the central control is coming in.
yeah,
It's like,
the central controls is, for instance, there's a central control with our temperature. That basically it regulates the temperature. The temperature of our bodies is too hot, that it senses, and then it causes us to sweat. And if we're too cold, so basically we assume that there's an orchestration. If there wasn't any conductor in the orchestra, all the instruments would do what they want. So we're arbitrarily saying that the central control is the conductor of the orchestra, okay? That basically, to create harmony and balance, there must be some seed of intelligence, some rhyme, some reason, some system. So that's where it comes in, that basically, as we mentioned about the harmony and balance, that you need some sort of regulation. Just like you could say, like the central control might be, you know, regulating gravity, so it keeps. So it's an arbitrary concept, but it absolutely helps in pulling it all together. Yeah, that's a good question, but we'll get into many other examples where it will become clearer. And I think as we start out, and this sort of is sort of a mess in our minds, but as we talk more, I think the clarity of why we're doing things will come out. But I think the harmony, balance, conductor, orchestra. Okay. So,
We have another question right here.
I'm really enjoying thinking about this and how it's put together, and thinking about the connecting loops, and how you know, somebody just said that when we are, you know, we've had the experience, I guess a lot of people raise their hand, of feeling that harmony and connection but that there's real resistance to that
Yes.
as well, which is kind of like the crux of our profession in a way,
Yeah.
is that resistance and that. So I'm curious to see where you're going with this, of how to
Yes,
sort of pitch
yes.
the benefit of that, because
Okay.
there's things we don't want to feel connected to in our own
Yeah.
psyche, in
Yes.
our own world, to
Yeah.
terrorist groups or.
Yes.
So all those resistances to that, and how where this is going with working
Okay.
with people through that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We will get into that, and the resistance is absolutely crucial. And you're ahead of us, and I appreciate you being ahead of us. But that will come. I want to sort of
Yeah.
tell a story, but I think all of us intuitively know this story, and this is just a way that this crazy physicist puts it together for us. So, yeah.
Yeah,
that
and I
we'll-
just had one other thought that there's real sort of like ancient technologies and techniques that sort of rely on the pervading animated principle for the healing potential. there.
Yes,
So it's-
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, great question. Okay, well, let's look at this. This is Edvard Munch. What do you feel about this? This is a screaming child in Syria that's being bombed. Do we experience that terror, that scream, right here, right now? After all, we're not connected to that child, but yet do we experience it? That looking at a ball allows us to understand a little bit about that we are non-dualistically connected to that child in Syria because of the emotional experience that we have, that we don't see the link, but if we look at this ball, that there's that child in Syria, and we're connected. And yet, dualistically, that it's a child's scream, the child's voice, the people in the surroundings that hear that. So basically what we're talking about is understanding both the event and the connectivity, the experience that we have on just looking at that masterpiece by Munch. So non-duality, this is a word that is in the literature that we're going to talk a lot about, but it's just a phrase, and it extends seamlessly throughout space and time, existing right here, right now. So basically, that child in Syria is, yes, located here, but there is a connectivity. So, this next slide, can you just imagine that right here, right now, you are simultaneously connected to both the harmony and balance of nature and the suffering child in Syria? That we bring up a point about the resistance. And someone mentioned about eye system. But let's just see if we can answer this particular question of the essence of nature and the essence of human beings. So if all existence is endowed with this capacity for harmony and balance, how do we account for the suffering in the world?